so as you know, during COVID and lockdown, people were just forced to, you want me to hold the microphone? No, okay, to stay home whenever they could, whenever they had a job that allowed them to work from home. And so this is like really a big shock, exogenous shock on the place you work. And this is really the opportunity to assess whether there is an impact on life satisfaction and mental health. So we use this as well, not perfect, but a kind of natural experiment. And of course, the question is for the future, will work from home persist? If so, it's going to have a lot of impact on many things. You know, if you can hire people and not have to give them a room, it's going to be cheaper. So maybe an increase in labor demand. Maybe women will work more, labor supply of women, because they can, you know, conciliate work and family life. If people can work from any place, they're going to settle in nicer places than just the city center, and because it's cheaper and better quality of life. So the organization of, you know, spatial organization of countries is going to change. There's going to be a deconcentration. So there's a lot of micro and macro effects, and the question is, are firms going to want to keep workers away from their premises, and are workers going to want to remain at home? So in this paper, we look at the labor supply side. So is it nice for workers to be working from home or not? So we know, so how could it be nice? How could it be nice or not nice? We know what the drivers of well-being and well-being at work are, more or less. So, you know, autonomy, prospects for progression, meaningfulness of the job, well, purpose, work-life balance, job security. All these drivers could go either way. For instance, autonomy you could think is nice, I can do what I want with my time, but sometimes it's the contrary. There is some algorithmic control, you know, you're supposed to be in front of your computer is controlled by your employer, so maybe you get more autonomy or less from working from home. Career prospect, maybe you don't know what's happening in the firm, so you can't really expect, or maybe on the contrary, it's leveling the playing field. There's no, you know, everybody on the same ground. Social capital, so relations with colleagues, I think it's not really, well, work from home is attenuating the benefit of this. Purpose, work-life balance supposed to be good, but the first studies that we had during COVID showed that for women, for instance, it was more work, so it was not necessarily good. Job security, also the only unambiguous thing is not to have to commute anymore, because we know from this research domain that over 30 minutes of commuting between home and work is bad for detrimental to your life satisfaction and mental health. Okay, so before COVID, work from home was really small, from 3 to 5% of the labor force, but nonetheless there was a lot of study about work from home or telework, distant work, impact on productivity or well-being. And essentially, the evidence is all over the place. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad for mental health. It's not really conclusive. During COVID, there were some experiments conducted within firms, and it tended to show a positive impact, but it was mostly, you know, call centers. You cannot really generalize the impact of work from home if you're thinking about people who are doing a very lonely and independent task and repetitive, so not really generalizable. So during COVID, there was, of course, a lot of evidence showing that people were stressed and mental health decreased with telework, but it's difficult to disentangle the fact that people are working from home because there is this pandemic, and so they're afraid of being ill. It's a very stressful context, so you would really need to be able to depart, you know, the fact of this is COVID, and I'm afraid, and I'm working from home. So if you want to look at people who are working from home and compare with something that is comparable. If you just look at somebody who's working from home and somebody who's not during lockdown, you're comparing two completely different persons. They have different jobs. One is a researcher, the other one is in the construction sector. If they have different life satisfaction or mental health, it's not necessarily related to work from home. You want to look at people switching to working from home. But so you need to have a point before COVID. But even then, if you have two persons, again, the construction sector and the researcher, and they move because they have different jobs, and so maybe the impact of moving into work from home or not moving would be different. Maybe the construction sector guy would love to work from home or not, maybe he wouldn't like it at all, and researchers would like it, so it's difficult to compare. So you really want to have longitudinal data, you want to have observations before COVID, you want observations during COVID, and you want people who go in and out of work from home during COVID. And this is what we do, and I think nobody did before. Okay, so we use this wonderful UK HLS panel, which is a regular yearly panel before the pandemic, and then they added regular almost bi-monthly waves during COVID with these specific questions about in particular telework. And so of course, in order to be able to identify a causal impact of work from home on life satisfaction or mental health, you have to assume that people didn't choose, so they moved into telework or out of telework when government or the firm decided that they should do so. We can relax this assumption a little bit later. So the important thing about this data is that some people work from home, not necessarily at always, but sometimes. Okay, so what we find, I'm really surprised because workers always ask to work from home. I mean, even at PSC, in the admin, people have been asking to the general secretary whether they can have some days at home, and the general secretary always said no, because work from home is not really work. So you would think that when they eventually have the possibility of doing so, they will enjoy. But the result is that, on the contrary, there is no impact on life satisfaction, and if any, there's a negative impact on mental health. So I'm not going to tell this to you because we're, you all know that we're in, you know, the UK HLS, we're in England, but you know that there were some periods of really strict lockdown, which were essentially the same in England, Wales, and Scotland, at least at the beginning of the period, and then maybe it was not less homogeneous. And anyway, during this entire period, you had this strong regulation and also the recommendation sustained by the media and social networks, you know, stay-at-home orders. So you know better than me, but I think it was really stringent, at least during 2020. Okay, so data, we used this UK HLS, we used the year 2020. So the COVID waves starting which include life satisfaction and, sorry, how do I go back? Okay, I'll just skip. Okay, so we use the, I don't know how to go back. It's like in real life. Okay, so we have 7 special COVID waves, which are April, May, June, July, September, November, and then it goes further, but then people have the choice of working from home or not. And so we use 4 years before COVID, and these 7 waves during COVID. We focus on employed people with, of course, positive working hours, and we drop individuals who used to telework before. We really want to see people, we want to compare what it does to your mental health to move into telework or go out of it if you didn't used to do it before. Okay, so the outcomes, you know, it's life satisfaction, of course, and GHQ mental health scores. So it's a series of 12 questions, like have you recently been able to concentrate? And then you can answer on this 4-step scale, much less than usual, same, or more. So we create a synthetic index, and we will also look at each specific questions. Okay, so yeah, so I don't know. So it's a definitive identification with individual feast effects. So we look at people who we define as intention to treat. So people who have a teleworkable job. So people who can work from home. Okay, maybe I'll skip. And so people that we see at least once working from home. And then what we are going to look at is the period when they are actually treated, meaning working from home. And these are the questions that allow us to do this. Okay, so treated, when you see the table, means somebody actually working from home at that wave. Okay, so just to show you that, you know, nobody used to be working from home in the UK HLS, and suddenly it jumps until 60% and onward. This I skip, so this is, maybe I skip this too, the equation, okay. Okay, so results. So the result is in average. People, so the question is, do you work from home? No, well, never, sometimes, often, always. So always mean every day. I'm always working from home. Often is, you know, most of the time. sometimes, I guess. So we consider working from home often or always. So we differentiate these two intensities. And so the results is that controlling for the fact that this is COVID, controlling for the fact that I have a teleworkable job, controlling for the fact that I have a teleworkable job and this is COVID, interacting COVID with all the observables, the impact of working from home always is negative in average on the sample for mental health, and there's no impact on life satisfaction. Okay. So then, what about time? Because this is during. I mean, this is lengthy. You work from home, you know, April, May, July, September. So maybe things change. So what about time analysis? So we look at people. We expect two potentially different things. Maybe people adapt. We know in this literature people adapt to everything. Or maybe they self-select into work from home when they can at the end of the period. So, or maybe on the contrary, they adapt, so the effect becomes more positive, or maybe on the contrary, they desocialize completely, they become more and more isolated, and they miss more and more the social relations with colleagues and the meaning that comes from the purpose that comes from being here, you know, with people. So we don't know what's going to happen over time. So we studied the effect of working from home for 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 consecutive months. So this is so I'm working from home in May, and I'm working from home for, this is the first, this is May and I'm working from home. This is June and I've been working from home from the start. This is July and I've been working from home from the start in May, June and July. Etc., etc. So when you go right, these people have been working from home from the start and more and more and more. So what we see is that this is mental health. So initially there's a negative impact on mental health of people who work from home, always, the red, or often, the blue. Negative in May, negative in June, and then it vanishes. Then there's no impact anymore. People adapt. Mental health is not affected anymore. So this is just for the feeling useful, how useful you feel. Negative impact in May, negative impact in June. Remember that these guys are home since March. So March, April, May, June. And then the effect goes away. Same for being able to concentrate. So, okay. So we see that at first individuals' mental health deteriorates. And in average, it's negative. And then with time, they adapt. So do they adapt, or are we sure that this is adaptation? So maybe yeah. Maybe they self-select into work from home. We're not really sure. You know, we can be really sure that they are obliged to work from home, especially at the end of the period. So there is one question. Which is asked not always, but only in June, September, and January 2021, asking people whether when all this is over, what would they like to do? They would like to continue, or they would like to go back to the firm. And so people can say, again, I would like to stop, or I would like to go to work from home sometimes, often, or always. So we can't really control for that, because this is asked only in certain waves. And this time analysis is based on people who remain all the time. But we can still look if there is a correlation, and there is one, a small one. So this is people, I want to work from home. I'm saying that I want to work from home in June. The impact of the fact that I am actually working from home in July, in September, in December, November, January, etc. So there is a small self-selection effect, but it's really small compared to the actual work from home. This is something for September. I'm saying in September that I want to work from home in the future. It has no impact on me working from home in November. There's some impact in December and January. But it's already January 2021, so ideally we would restrict the analysis to 2020, because this is really when this is a pure natural exogenous shock of putting people work from home. Okay, so conclusion, partial work from home is preferable to total work from home, that's for sure. People who work from home always are much worse than those who work sometimes. There is probably an adaptation effect and maybe a small self-selection effect. So the conclusion in terms of policy is that I guess there is no one-size-fits-all. If firms impose to their workers to work from home all the time, it's going to be detrimental to their well-being. And if there is some self-selection impact, self-selection phenomenon, then you should leave the choice to people. So if work from home becomes an additional degree of freedom, it will be good for people. If it becomes imposed, it will be bad. This is what our take from the data. And I stop.
Okay, any questions in the back?
Yeah.
Thank you, fascinating analysis. So I have one observation and then one question. The observation is when you ask employers why they want to continue to help their people work from home, the top number one reason is for well-being of their workers. So there's clearly some crossed wires here potentially going on, and/or, this leads to my question, what do you think could explain then the fact that despite people on semi-objective variables not necessarily being better off working from home, the vast majority of those people whose job is amenable to working from home are nevertheless saying, this is what I want to do, I'm quitting my job if I'm not allowed to do this. Twice as many people would like to quit their job if they're not allowed to work flexibly, or I'm moving, employer, I'm willing to take a pay cut. All of that analysis and research seems quite compelling. So what explains the difference between people's actual observed, well-being versus what they would then like to do in the future?
Mm-hmm. So employers, I'm not sure all employers want to keep the workers home for the sake of employers. It's also a cost reduction device. It's much, but maybe some of them are benevolent. Okay. So why do people say they want to continue working from home, but they're not happy? So first of all, maybe they want to continue to work from home sometimes or often, but never always. So the really big negative impact is on those who work all the time from home. Maybe there's some heterogeneity too, although here we tried heterogeneity. We tried to look at women versus men, children versus no kids, etc. In that data, there is no heterogeneity, statistically significant heterogeneous effect. In many studies that I saw, it's the same. We all expect that women will be less happy working from home than men. Many times it does not appear in the data. So, but still, there may be some heterogeneity. And then finally, maybe people, maybe people think it's nice to work from home because they can get organized. They have this idea that it's good for them, but they don't realize that on the mental health side, they get depressed, they lose social integration, they're becoming anomic. Maybe they're not fully aware of the consequences of not being in contact with their colleagues. Behavioral economics has shown that this can happen, that you're not fully aware of the consequences of your decisions.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Boundaries between work and home. So some people, I think, really struggled with not having the commute because they couldn't change personas. When you go to work, you often, people talk about putting on armor, putting on my suit, you change personas. And certainly, colloquially, with some business leaders I speak to, they said, I go in the kitchen to make a coffee and my 8-year-old daughter would say, who is this man? Because it's not fun daddy, it's suddenly serious, unhappy daddy or whatever. So I think something about boundaries has really broken down. And then I also think people have got a focusing error because they say, do you want to work from home? Home is a happy place, work is not. So they think they want to work from home.
Yeah.
But just because of the word, not really. So when you ask, I think it's a really, I think there's something wrong in the way we're framing the question or something like that. We're framing it in a, do you want to work from home? Not. I think we need to frame it in, would you like to see your colleagues? So maybe, then you suddenly, so I think there must be some error in that. I don't know, that's my just the thoughts. I'd love to see the paper. It looks
It's true that home is identified with, non-work time, leisure, so it's nicer a priori. So maybe people understand it this way. It's true. I don't know, boundaries, I would call it identity. You know, you dress, you go in a place, you interact with some formal way, and you're motivated. When you're in a different place, when I work in my dining room, which is where I work from home, the hierarchy of priorities change. Suddenly I think about, you know, the washing machine, it's a good time to do it, and I'm going to take advantage of the time to, and suddenly you're not into work anymore, and after some time, it's true that if you are doing a Zoom and you're in pajama, you have pajama pants, you're losing identity, so you're losing motivation, you're losing the feeling of, if you think about social life as a, you know, a series of acting scenes, like interactionist theory that I like, you're not in this interaction, professional interaction, so you're losing momentum.
Any more questions we have in the back? And then forward here.
I'm just curious, and I'm going to reveal something about my home life with this question, but did you perhaps measure
Okay.
whether or not people were homeschooling their children during that miserable dip in their mental health during COVID?
We tried that, but in this data it does not appear. We have another paper with Andrew, who is here, and Anthony Le Painter and Conchita. I still have to write this during the summer. But there, with the GSOEP panel, we see exactly, so everybody is less happy working from home, so mental health deteriorates, also in Germany, especially women who have school-age kids, so they have to do school with them. So the negative impact of work from home is increased for women who have these kids between 7 and 14, and it's attenuated for women who have babies. They're happy to be with the babies. So there is heterogeneity. Yeah, women who have young kids, not school age, they are less unhappy with work from home than the average. And women who have school-age children, they are more unhappy. This is with the German data.
Got you.
But in this data, there is no heterogeneity. I don't know why.
Yeah, just to add to that, the Lancet Mental Health Task Force, which John and I, and Jan actually sit on, we found also that your opinion of if you thought your own government was handling the COVID crisis well had an impact on people's mental health. It's another covariate just to add into the mix. Yeah.
Okay, there was one in the back.
Andrew? Yeah.
Hi, I just wondered if you'd looked at the economic factors that played a part, because I work for BT, and one of the things that we're finding increasingly in the lower paid end is employees that are choosing and actively wanting to work from home because of the commuting costs. And also they can feed themselves cheaper at home than the cost of food at work.
No, we didn't. We controlled for income, but of course there can be some, you don't have to spend the expenditure of commuting. There's another thing I could say, I mean, if nobody's asking, because it's not, of course it's a natural experiment, it's nice, we can see the impact of working from home. But this is special because everybody's working from home. So you're just doing what everybody else is doing, there's no stigma. Maybe when all this is over, working from home, the impact of mental health and life satisfaction will depend on what other people do. If it becomes a new normal, then maybe it feels good. If you're the only one to do it, or if it's the minority, maybe you feel, I'm not really doing what I should be doing. So this externality effect, or I don't know how to call it, or coordination, is absent from this analysis. We just cannot do it. But of course, it's an important dimension. So this is like qualifying the result.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
I suppose one of the important questions in Western society, looking over the next 10 or 20 years, is what might be the cumulative effects on people and on businesses of very long-run periods of working from home. In a sense, you're looking at the impact effects, of course, and they clearly matter. I wonder if you could help us to understand what might be the cumulative consequences of long periods of working from home. Do you think you could do that?
I can imagine what would be the cumulative effect. I guess if people were working from home, after some time they would realize that they really miss the social interaction dimension of life and well-being. And I guess they would recreate that aside from work. So they would start, I don't know, having this, neighbor associations or socialization instances or something else, or work more in NGOs, or I guess they would find another way, because I don't believe that people can really remain like this, like a monads with distant communication, you know, on everything on Zoom. It looks like another humanity. I'm not really sure.
Okay, thank you so much, and then a round of applause.
Thank you.